Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime R, the first edition for this week. We're going to start with the week looking at what concessions will need to be made as far as ending the ongoing crisis in the Northwest and Southwest is concerned. The crisis started in 2016, and today we are in 2022, counting our losses. Human lives are being taken every day, properties are being destroyed, and we're counting, and seemingly there are certain positions that have not changed. The Reconstruction Commission is working and at a very slow pace. There is a bilingualism commission that was created as a way of responding to this crisis. Okay, if we were to evaluate the gains made so far, I'm sure you would agree with me that it is not moving as expected, and as well as many other efforts made by the government of Cameroon to bring an end to the crisis. What are those things that have not worked to put a definite end to the crisis is going to be the focus for today's edition of the program. If we say concessions, what are the concessions that ought to be made either from the side of the government or those that are carrying arms, asking for separation after 6 years of fighting? We are discussing on this topic this evening with our panelists who are in the house already. Doc.Ako John Ako is in the house. He is a lecturer of some universities across Cameroon. He's equally a key member of Cameroon civil society. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, Mr. Leonard, it's a pleasure once more talking Cameroon. And again, 6 years after the Anglophone crisis, still remains one of the major negative impact that Cameroon is experiencing. And we think it is again a crossroad where a lot of insufficiencies, lack of governance, and failure to respect human rights and human dignity continuously being violated in Cameroon has been exposed. A lot of suggestions which we considered as perishable have been unable to bring to an end the ongoing Anglophone crisis. Hatred, clashes, a tussle for power, some seeking for notice and others looking for political appointment, institutions that are not well suited to solve the problem that we call the Anglophone or Southern Cameroon crisis is as old as the history of the two Cameroons. And to what extent has the response been given adequate enough? Those responses, which many said were discussed at the major national dialogue, have they been capable of meeting the willingness of those who are at the war front? Have they been capable of meeting the aspiration of what we call, people will say, the lawyers and the teachers' worries in 2016? It still remains very unanswered question, or very unfertile grounds or soil from which Anglophone Cameroonians today continue to tussle and again meet on so many other social media and platforms, really not accepting or accepting and others thinking that they are better off than the others. Is Cameroon really silent? Is the government of Cameroon capable of meeting up? That is a claim that the government made in 2017, that the Anglophone crisis remains an internal crisis and that they can manage. To what extent has that really worked? We are still to know.
Okay, we also are in the company of Mr. Raymond Njumen. He is a builder, Cameroon builder, nation builder. He's going to be taking part on Prime R for the very first time. We hope that it's going to be a regular panelist. Good evening, welcome, all the way from Njumen.
Thank you so much, Leonard, and good evening to our fellow televiewers. It's always an opportunity to be on a platform where we can be able to contribute towards building a better nation, and I'm very confident that we all have a mandate and a responsibility to look past the different challenges that we are facing and take responsibility towards living a nation that is better than the one we met as far as our country is concerned.
Tamai Travis is also going to be part of today's edition of Prime R. Good evening, Travis, and welcome.
Good evening, Leo. Good evening to the peace-loving people of Way Village in Njumen Division. And of course, good evening to the people of Moya. Good evening to President Bia, Professor Maurice Kamto, Chairman Nijan Frundi, Justice Ayapo Abine. Good evening to Cabra Libi, and of course, all the political stakeholders who are joining hands on deck with their different diversities to ensure that we move towards a greater path of peace. Good evening to the mothers and the fathers who have lost their children in the ongoing conflict in the Northwest and Southwest region. Courage, brothers and sisters, do not stumble.
Ndifor Richard is also going to be part of today's edition of the program. Ndifor, good evening and welcome. Okay, Ndifor is not yet connected. We're going to be trying to get him hooked on to the program this night. I'll start with you, Doc.Ako John Ako. 6 years after we started witnessing the crisis in the Southwest and Northwest regions, and some positions have not changed since.
Yeah, a lot of positions have not changed, but equally, internal fraction still remain one of the most that we have witnessed. The Anglophone Cameroonians still unable to speak on a common ground. The government on another end, which says that federation or whatsoever secession will not have its place. In another way, you have a lot of others thinking that it is time for them to negotiate other acknowledgement by the state or the oligarchy government in Yaoundé, where a single person will recognize them by appointment. It comes at times when other Southern Cameroonians, Anglophone Cameroonians, are thinking that it is not time yet for another class of elite, while others think that it is time for them to rise to the rostrum and equally perform and serve the nation. Anglophone crisis today equally give us an idea that even those we thought were for Cameroon beginning to think that they have another fatherland, those working for their own private or personal pockets. A lot of other what we call the amber business has developed within the same crisis. Others now pushing forward for other agendas. Others use it equally to settle social causes. Some people think that the crisis is a time for them to settle off some anger against those whom they think were against them when things were peaceful. Today, we find again Southern Cameroonians who equally start thinking that there is a need to even present what they thought of an internal query or conflict between the Northwesterners and the Southwesterners. And you find that debate again saying that regionalization, I doubt if regionalization does not mean or is not in line with the government of unity, that Cameroon is united and indivisible, or that regionalization means some Cameroonians do not have the power to live in another region or to exercise economic, political, social, or cultural rights in other regions of the nation. It was noticed within the same crisis that a lot of those from the West region were attacked in Samalima, their stores looted and others burned into ashes. Cameroonians equally condemned such acts seriously. Why has the elite of the Northwest and the Southwest still remain mute in the midst of a more serious crisis within a crisis? And we equally think that there are a lot who push forward for this agenda. And I said, for anybody thinking he's a minority, for anybody thinking he is weak, it is already a fact that you have been defeated. And it is a time good for us to move as Cameroonians, and that the Anglophone crisis is instead a call for what I call the reawakening of the English people in Cameroon. Southern Cameroonians came over in November 2016 to say we are poorly treated. How improved government has done that. A lot will state to you that government did a lot. Yes, some people said the government has carried on all the worries. In fact, some people said more than 200% of those worries demanded by the teachers and lawyers have been answered at the measure of national dialogue. And that will mean recruiting more Anglophone teachers, giving some ministries that Anglophones have never obtained were given to them. To that extent, we were thinking that a lot have been settled. What about the clergymen? What about the church? Does it mean that the church in Yaoundé is different from the church in Bamenda or in the Southwest region, where we see a lot, some insulted church clergymen insulted the English people in some region out of the Northwest and Southwest, while some clergymen equally in the North and Southwest have taken upon themselves to equally state that there is need for us to get into a sincere dialogue. It is again sad that those whom we think that are there to make the laws, the National Assembly and the Senate, are still unable to pronounce an agenda of a crisis that had been disturbing the nation for close to 6 years now. Can we really not feel it that even the government is equally divided on the option of how to handle the Anglophone crisis? This does not just leave out the international community. A lot of division. The French still think that Cameroon is a decentralized, united republic, and that those who think of federation should go very far out of the nation, which they think belongs to them on the 1st of January 1960. Is this really true? To what extent is the international community equally committed to see that a solution got or arrived at within these two regions or help Cameroonians to solve the crisis? At the same time, the military tussle, we have equally noticed the United Nations complain, the United States complain. We have seen the Russians coming at the height of the crisis to strengthen more military agreement with the same nation. Does it mean that the arms that are given by these foreign partners are meant to kill fellow Cameroonians with the accomplices of the state, which thinks is having a war rather than an internal crisis that could be handled politically or peacefully?
Okay. Njumen, Raymond, are you surprised at the positions that are currently being held by those involved, the stakeholders, 6 years after the advent of the crisis?
Mr. Leo, apparently it's saddening to note that Cameroonians 6 years on keep killing one another, and it's like it's a right. We see blood running every blessed day. And we though the government will say they've done a lot, we hold government responsible for where we find ourselves. It goes without saying that when the former Prime Minister, His Excellency Philemon Yang, was sent on mission to the Northwest and Southwest as far as this crisis is concerned, on the instructions of the head of state to actually find out what the aspirations of the Southern Cameroonians are, or better still, those of the Northwest and Southwest. I remember vividly the resolutions that were taken out of Boya and taken out of Bamenda. The Red Dots release all those who were arrested concerning the crisis, stop the prosecution of those that are being prosecuted in the law court. We need, demilitarize the zone, and we need federation. This was the statements or the resolutions that His Excellency Philemon Yang took out of the Northwest and Southwest region. But you will still remember that immediately he left the Southwest and Northwest and went to Yaoundé, there was a Southwest Forum and a Northwest Forum for elites. I want to thank Doc.Ako for reminding us that the elites, sensing danger that they are going out of relevance, felt that, hey, we can't give up our grip at the level of representing the Northwest and Southwest at the level of state affairs. What did they do when they came down to Boya and Bamenda? What happens? They said these were their own resolutions. We are for a one united, decentralized Cameroon. We need more military. We need military presence in the region. And so it was a complete contrast of what the population wanted and what the elites wanted. And as a result, since the elites are those who are in governance and those who are governing, they implemented what they wanted, which simply means that the elites did not actually hold the values and, of course, hold in esteem the aspirations of the common man. Leo, it's very important for us to know that Cameroon, per its historic background, has the Southern Cameroons and La République coming together. And the other day I was listening to the head of state's remarks when he was asked by Mohamed at the Peace Summit in France, saying that the problems as far as Cameroon is concerned with this crisis are very, very complicated. And being complicated, according to him, he believed that there was supposed to be, an attempt made in helping that the English-speaking Cameroonians and French-speaking Cameroonians get to a platform where they are all equal in status. And the subject of marginalization is not new when it comes to the history of mankind. And of course, Cameroon is not experiencing something that other countries have not been able to experience. And so finding ourselves that the government says we cannot discuss form of state, that had been the problem that the country has faced over the years. We don't want to discuss form of state, and the form of state have been the bone of contention as far as the separatists are concerned, because if you look at Cameroon as it has evolved from 1960 moving on, the constitution of the federal constitution which we had made room for the fact that two people from different backgrounds are coming together to build a great nation. And I want to remind televiewers that the presidency of this nation, the name of the presidency of the nation is known as the Unity Palace. And why is it called the Unity Palace? It's called the Unity Palace so that Cameroonians will have it at the back of their mind all the time that two people came together. But as far as the regime in Yaoundé is concerned, there is a mindset that, okay, Cameroon was partitioned. And because Cameroon was partitioned, it is another part of Cameroon that is being brought back. And so it is reconciling brothers who were separated apart to come together. And of course, it's true. It's reconciling brothers that were separated that are coming together, like we had the Fumban issue. But the another aspect, Mr. Leo, I want us to understand is that the Southern Cameroonians are the separatists, are advancing a cause as though Southern Cameroon was an independent entity. You know, we talk a lot about British Southern Cameroons. But I asked a question the other day to one of my brothers who is so concerned. I asked him, have you ever talked about British Northern Cameroon? And he was like, what are you talking about? If we are talking about British Southern Cameroon, we should also remember there was a British Northern Cameroon. And what happened with British Northern Cameroon was that they voted to become part of Nigeria, and British Southern Cameroon voted to become part of the Republic of Cameroon. It therefore means if the choice of these British Northern Cameroonians are today Nigerians, by virtue of the decision that their forefathers took, we, by that same decision, makes us Cameroonians. And if you look at the birth certificate of the Federal Republic, it is independence and reunification of Cameroon. As if it is independence and reunification of Cameroon, it simply means that our independence is found in the Union. And as such, if there are any grievances and advocacy programs to be carried forth as far as the aspirations of the Southern Cameroonians are concerned, it must be in the Union and not out of the Union.
Okay, not out of the Union. Thank you for taking us back memory lane to make some of our televiewers understand what we're talking about. But my question stays with the positions. We are talking about concessions. When it started, A said, I am here. B said, this is my position. That was in 2016. We are in 2022. Have we surprised that some positions have not changed 6 years after?
Logically, we are not surprised from the conflict perspective because those manning the affairs on both sides, they have not seen the fear, they have not seen the fatigue, they have not had the heartbreak of war, they have not witnessed the bitterness, they have not witnessed the emptiness of mourning after a carnage is done. It takes a few to start a war, and it takes a village, a population to end the war. And why we are witnessing this situation is simply because both sides have decided to stay by their financial gains and not by the interest of the common man. They don't feel the fear that it is in the hearts of older citizens in the northwest and the southwest region under the shower of bullets and artillery. At the mention of a sound or the hearing of a sound, even older men who should be stronger just are panicking. The reason because we feel that we are more important than each other in terms of conflict. Now, this is what we should experience, Mr. Leo, why we have not had this concession. We have not had this concession because our love for human vanity outgrows our love for humanity. But we shall have concession when our love for humanity outgrows our love and appreciation for human vanity. When I talk about human vanity, I'm talking about those who position themselves that if we have to go for a federation, this means that I will lose my relevance as an elite in the northwest and the southwest region, and there will be new elites that will come into play. Therefore, my love for human vanity should take the center stage, as my brother here rightly put it, that the elitist syndrome of people not willing to give up their position. The same situation over the other side, where you see elite will say the Prime Minister took concession, and also even the current Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph Dongute, did the same. And the same was said for the people in the Northwest and Southwest region. The people in Boya Council Town Hall said they wanted 10 states, 4 states. They gave a series of federation, and never was it in what they said, talked about accelerated decentralization. The same situation in Kumba, the same situation in Matism, the same situation in Menchum division, the same situation in Donga Mantu, the same situation in Meme division, all clamor for federation in whatever state. But when it reached Yaoundé, it was accelerated decentralization to the side of the non-state armed groups. The same situation plagued, because those who are funding this war are people who have never had the pain of war, who have never seen the piercing of bullets into the soul of their loved ones. They are sitting out there fantasizing and romanticizing war. But there's one thing we must have in common, and that is that whether the people from the Northwest and Southwest region have a grievance as well as those from the other regions, we should know that as Cameroonian and as a people, we are united in one common front, and that is poverty. We're united by poverty. While the rest of the world is moving forward, we are left behind fighting each other. And the only way that we can come together as a people is when we bring humanity at the center stage. Why we have not been able to have concession is because those at the forefront, that is the government ministers, who have branded themselves as chief negotiators, even without having degree or having the knowledge in negotiation. The amber fighters who are clamoring for justice before dialogue, even without understanding that we need reconciliation, truth and love before justice. My brother here said something that when the people from the Northwest, when the Prime Minister came, the people said those who have been arrested should be released so that there can be a de-escalation. But today you are hearing these same people from the other side of the panel, or the armed group, are saying that we cannot move forward without having justice. Okay, are you saying that those who have been arrested by Cameroon's government should be judged first because of what they have done before we could have dialogue? If you are saying no justice without peace, but if you are saying peace without justice, it simply means that you are saying release all those you have arrested and forgive all those whom you felt are responsible. Vice versa, we come to the table and talk. That is where we can have an amicable settlement. You cannot be at the other side and you are clamoring that justice before peace. On the same hand, you have people who have been arrested and who you claim are your people. Therefore, you are saying that, come on, government, please judge them, sentence them, then we come to the table and we discuss. That's why you are looking at justice. Again, I say the justice they are saying is not the justice that they meant, because oftentimes when you go on a negotiating table, you realize that parties don't actually know what they want on that table. Because when you are clamoring for justice, what justice do you want? The justice is social justice. In 2016, we needed justice. At the time, guns and bullets were not raining in Northwest and Southwest. The justice we needed was the justice of equality, fairness, equal distribution of resources. At that time, people have not been killed. But when guns came into place, A starting fighting, B, we no longer need but justice. We need truth, reconciliation, and forgiveness.
Okay, truth, reconciliation, and forgiveness. We're talking about concessions. We all are aware of the positions taken by the stakeholders. Like I keep saying from the beginning, today, do you think that we need to have a rethink on the propaganda that we send out there on both sides? This is what we stand for. This is what this is standing for. Do we need to start reworking the information we are peddling out there?
Yeah, Mr. Leonard, one of the things which I believe we have been seeing is that people said the only forum where all forces were supposed to meet was the major national dialogue. Mm-hmm. And at that particular dialogue, which today we consider it as a monologue, because the agenda was drafted by one person, the members of the commission were assigned and designed by one single individual, the proceedings were headed and even controlled and monitored by the central government. Somewhere, we equally realized that at the beginning, the government sole-handedly funded the objective of secession and separation. If you ask people like Agbombala, you ask of Dr. Fontem Neba, they will tell you that while in Bamenda, the last meeting that the government annulled the consortium and got members of that consortium arrested, none of such issues were on the agenda of the government. And we are now start thinking, if government still think that really what was presented to him or to them or to her at the government, to the government in Yaoundé and in Bamenda by the Gogomo-led envoy or mission to that particular town was really for separation. Nobody fanned secession than the government. I will remember very strongly that the Minister of Communication at the time, Issa Chiruma Bakari, made serious declaration telling people at the first that separation of federalism is forbidden to be discussed on so many platforms, which means it is just single-handedly the government option of decentralization. And the question I ask is, if federation is tantamount to separation, when we come out with such declarations as members of government who are there to direct the mind of the state.
Yeah, Doc, that was in the beginning.
Yeah, we are talking about the various groups.
Yeah, but today we are discussing it. Isn't that a concession that was made?
That is what I'm saying, that various people have different positions. What we now try to find out, that the government presented one single position as the ultimate. Has the government given equally that position for those who thought or were reasoning otherwise to present their own agenda? I'm talking of the All Anglophone Conference too, on the other side, which equally thought that there was a need to talk to first Southern Cameroonians as individuals, then make a presentation to the government. That notwithstanding, a lot of those members presented their worries to the government, and today you find that which becomes a slogan, Cameroon remains one and indivisible Cameroon. And I ask, the one and indivisible Cameroon means that a system of governance which is not of decentralization is not welcome. And so if it is decentralization, it is accepted. A law has been voted. And what we needed to know, if really, how can I call, the predecessor or the remnant or the cure, like put it like that, the cure to bring down the Anglophone crisis was decentralization. We have seen councils have been created. We have seen the raising of NASLA into a more modern national institution with the same standard like those coming from ENAM. And we are saying, has this really come to quell down the crisis? Are we really capable of withstanding that? Yes, government position has not changed. The separatists have not changed. Those who are fighting for federation, they haven't changed. And there is a need, if we have to see that concessions are given, we need again to get into details that whether this crisis was not a timely period for the government of Cameroon to equally think that it is high times that Anglophone become the president of this particular republic. I believe sometime we might leave the crisis and we start talking if certain positions that have been held by the other side, east or of the Mongo, could equally be given to Anglophone Cameroonians. Is it even been spoken about? If this is what we call concessions, it can equally be that the aspect of marginalization that was presented could be used as an instrument of governance. How can Cameroonians avoid marginalization? If marginalization was equally between the Anglophone Cameroon and the French Cameroon, Southern Cameroonians and La République du Cameroon, is there a need for us to say other regions too have been marginalized? And this become very, very positive if we look at what we call the indigenous right, like those from the East region that will equally think that they are not well represented. But I'm telling you that in so many other quarters, maybe the problem of one person is not the problem of the other. To what extent can we resolve this? Those who equally call for federation, they are holding meetings upon meetings on seeing how the government can get on to talk. And why not draft even a new constitution for Cameroon and direct the mind of the wishes of Cameroonians? A lot of political parties, which I may cite like the SDF or others, are for federation. Can we have this discourse in the National Assembly? Can that particular position equally become part of the second measure of national dialogue so that all parties will be represented and opinion taken? Why not? A referendum can be equally be a way out to see which concession can be made for one another. So Cameroonians will be given the possibility or the position of deciding what they want. And in this particular line, the government should not be so rigid. The government should not, like we say, have it all right, that all what comes from the government is right. Government is for the people, by the people, and for the people. That is what we are. The Cameroon is a democratic society. So we started somewhere in 1982, 1990, liberty laws were declared. And to what extent has that helped this particular nation, Cameroon? To what extent can Anglophone equally stand as the Speaker of the National Assembly? To what extent can Anglophone become the President of the Senate? To what extent can Anglophone become the Minister of Defense? There are a lot of those concessions which we are thinking that if marginalization is to be treated to its base, not only thinking that it should be given to Anglophones because we want them to stay quiet. We want things which are sustainable. Perishable solutions will keep on flaming the situation, because the moment it will not be there tomorrow, then there will still a real generation, maybe of the second or the third Anglophone crisis. There is a need for us to lift our laurels, because some people will tell you that government does not discuss on the streets. But I will tell them that the simplest and the most active government is a government of humility. Okay. Government that considers the people first rather than they themselves being at the top.
Okay, Mr. Raymond, can you see that positions have shifted, looking at it from the government bench, from the separatists and federalists?
Apparently, positions have not shifted, and that is why the crisis is ensuing. And the reason why positions have not shifted is because people have carried upon their own personal visions above the vision of the nation. And because of that, it becomes difficult, to have people on a platform to see that, listen, individuals and institutions will come and go, but the nation will remain. It's very important for government, because as far as I'm concerned, government has about 80% of responsibility in endeavoring that this crisis is brought to an end. And what can government do is just to create an enabling environment. Like the father of a house, bring all your children together and be able to listen to them and find out what their aspirations are, what they want to, how they want the family to be governed. And if each of them will bring out their proposals, then the family looks into the different proposals and see that these things can go on. Now, one of the things I am thinking from the hindsight of government is that constitutionally, the government have said the way Cameroon is governed is by decentralization. And unfortunately, over 20 plus years, decentralization have not been very effective. And so they want to try it now. And they are making statements like, okay, let us speed up the process. And the context of wanting to speed up the process, Cameroonians have waited for so long. And having waited for so long, they no longer have the desire to experience and experiment the decentralization context of which the government is trying to propagate. And that is why they are looking for other options. They say, okay, your decentralization did not work. It is not working. In fact, we don't like it. Give us federation. And I think that government should be able to say, okay, if this is what you want, let us be able to open a platform. Let's discuss it. If it requires us setting another constitutional reform to see that we develop a new constitution that will be for the interest of all Cameroonians, we can get that done. Now, at the level of the separatists, one thing which is obvious is the reason why they are standing on the ground of wanting to separate is because they have lost hope in the Cameroonian dream. What was their hope? Each time you sing the refrain of the English national anthem, it tells you land of promise, land of glory. And because of that particular dream of making Cameroon the land of promise and the land of glory, they are seeing things not working the way they are supposed to work. So they've given up. I had the opportunity to talk to a few of the guys who are in the field. And they tell me, it's not like we want this country to separate. What we simply want is equity, where the southern Cameroonians can feel belonging as far as the national life of the country is concerned. And I think that if government creates the enabling environment for all Cameroonians to come together and discuss a way forward, there will be a need. Now, one of the things which the separatists are saying is we need a mediator, we need an international mediator to be able to talk. But the question is, to them, they need a platform of confidence that, okay, maybe when government says I will do this, they'll be able to do it. Because over the years, promises have been made which have not yet been followed up effectively. I remember in your introduction, you talked about slow implementation of the different processes. And these are the things that Cameroonians are seeing on a daily basis, which are causing a lot of problems in our society. So there is a need for government which is piloting the affairs of the nation and who has the responsibility to safeguard human life at all platforms, to see that the enabling environment is created so that we can together discuss as a family for the welfare of Cameroon and be able to take responsibility in building a better nation.
Okay, we're talking about concessions, positions are shifting. I want, Jarvis, I don't know, you have followed the positions so far. You followed the federalist, the separatist, and the unionist, the government. Can you share with us what you've observed so far since the start of this crisis?
Well, since the start of this crisis, we had just two positions from the beginning.
Okay.
We had the position of those who, first of all, stated that there was no Anglophone crisis. And these persons are what we now call the unionists. And we had the position of those who said there was a crisis and there was injustice, and needed fairness, balance, and also needed equal distribution of resources. And these were under the banner of the consortium of the teachers and the lawyers. Now, within the Bamenda debacle, between Paul Gogomo and those of the other side who said there was injustice and we needed this to be corrected through a federation, the government, on its other hand, was clear that we are only focusing on the teachers and the lawyers' immediate concern. That is the redeployment of teachers, the translation of the Ohada law, the also creation of a common law bench at the level of the Supreme Court, and also the recruitment of 1,000 bilingual science teachers, and also to ensure that those other demands which were given by the lawyers are maintained. However, the lawyers were steadfast that these demands can only be well resolved if there is a federation. Ministers, unionists on their part said there was no Anglophone crisis. But as time went on, they shifted their position from there was no Anglophone crisis to an Anglophone crisis. At least they made a move, because even the head of state in his speech, that was 2018, said there was an Anglophone crisis and that he understands that Anglophones have genuine grievances and in the days ahead he's going to resolve them. And this was a shift in position from people who were working on high instruction saying there's no Anglophone crisis to the instructor now acknowledging that there is an Anglophone crisis. Now, as time went on, the Federalists splitted ways when government resorted in heavy cracking and created a vacuum where the long-awaited government enemy, that is the separatists, came into place with the arrest of the consortium leaders who were now arrested. And now at the end of the day, the vacuum was there. So the separatists took it upon themselves to say, okay, let us galvanize forces and let the people of the Northwest and Southwest realize that we are fighting for the release of Barrister Agbobala and all those who have been arrested, and let's show them that we are fighting for them. And that now bring out to the aspect of their own concession. They've not been able to shift their position from where they started, that it's either separation or nothing else. For example, the no school effect, Operation No School, we have not had a clear-cut dichotomy to say that, okay, you people can be going to school now, and when there is gunfire, you don't send your child to school, all those kind of things. The next one is Ghost Town. It's still very effective. We have not been able to say, okay, you know what, we are going to suspend lockdown or Ghost Town. There's no clear-cut communique. They are still on the fix. There's also next phase, which is blacklegism. People are being killed every day because accused of being blackleg. We've also had this position, which has not shifted, which is the position of that we don't want to see Brazzaville's product in this locality. We've not had the position shifted. Now, from the government, we've had a bit of shift in position, which again, don't get me wrong, may not be enough to sustain the crisis or to reduce the level of violence. The position of the government claims that they have released other prisoners, like Agbobala was released in 2018. Was released, and other journalists, Aita Tilarios, Amos Fofong, and others were released from prison. The government also says they have created the disarmament and demobilization. The government will also say that Okay, you know what? We have recruited bilingual science teachers. We have brought in accelerated decentralization. We have brought in the regional assembly. We have also brought in the House of Chiefs that you were clamoring that you want to go back to House of Chiefs in the Northwest and the Southwest region. These are some of the shifting ground of the government. But I ask a question, as you have put it, that in terms of the position, the separatists, from all their points that were laid down, we've not had a bit of shift in concession from that. Now, from the level of the federalists, we've had federalists that were clamoring for just two states. Today, we are hearing about the 10 states, the 4 states, the 2 states, and also communal federalism. These are shifts in position. Now, what you should know is that in conflict, you can never use the word never. Never does not exist. Why I say never does not exist? Because we have people who say the government will never negotiate. There was a major national dialogue, meaning that their never was obsolete. We have people who have said the government will never release Agobala. The government released Agobala. So in conflict, given where situation are, you may feel that it is never, but as time goes on, people shift their position. And let me tell you, Mr. Leo, that the truth is both sides, the government and the separatists, don't actually know what they want. Because if they do know what they want, they will understand that they are fighting for one common cause. Which is that common cause? The cost of equity, equality, fairness, balance in terms of distribution of resources, respect of the dignity of the human person, above all staying true to the value of the anthem we sing every day. The second standard of the anthem we sing every day, we state that instill in them the love and gentle ways. And I ask a question, when we sing that instill in them the love and gentle ways, which gentle ways both sides have been able to push forward? Because we have bigotry, we have hatred, we have division, we have a lot of derogatory words being used either on Mr. A or Mr. B. Go right now online, look at the comments on this same program. It will tell you the mindset of people we have. But in conflict, we should also be aware that the only way for us to have a common ground is for us to understand, ask the question, why? Why do you need federation? Why do you need decentralization? Why do you need separation? And if we ask this why, you will see that we share one lowest common multiple. And the lowest common multiple we share is that we want to eradicate poverty. We are united again in one common enemy, that is poverty. This man wants federation because he feels that with federation there will not be poverty in his community. This man wants decentralization because he feels that there will be equitable distribution of resources. This man wants separation because he believes that it will eradicate poverty. Now, we don't want to ask the question why. We are only on what, and what cannot take us to anywhere. We must ask the question why. If you are watching us, why do you need federation? Take your time, list it out, ask the next person that you always disagree with. Tell me why you need separation. Take both points, put them together. Take decentralization, ask why do you need decentralization? This is just an experiment. Take all, put together. You will see that all of you want the same thing. But how do we go about it?
Okay, how do we go about it? Doc.Ako John Ako, we are talking about positions that were made known in 2016. In the course of time, other problems have come up. Should we also think of identifying this problem, looking for ways to solving them, and then adapting them to the definite solution that would please everybody?
Yeah, we should know that governance is not rigid. Governance is flexibility. Governance equally is not static or permanent. Governance, that is why we said what we call the measured national dialogue was really what we call a game planned by the state. Negotiations and dialogue institutions of that nature are supposed to be permanent. Imagine that we had a minister in charge of dialogue and negotiation. Just, you can imagine what we're saying. This is what we mean, that after the measured national dialogue, one of the highest victory we would have had is making that particular organization permanent, rather than those we call commissions that were created and at the end we are still waiting for results. If we were thinking that the Anglophone crisis is not like Francophones will tell you, that the problem faced by Anglophones are problem faced by all Cameroonians. So which means that solving the Anglophone crisis was going to be something which is going to be malleable, capable of adapting with changing circumstances. Those who were equal in Bamenda Remember, on the very first time of the first day of the consortium meeting, there were 8 or 9 points presented on the agenda. By the time they could go in for the second, third day, the points went right up to 18. And this is why government started thinking like there is a manipulation somewhere, of which the moment we try to settle one problem, the other one regenerate. We have to answer it. And we should not think like Cameroonians who are talking to one another have a second agenda. And government quickly picked over it. There is a second agenda, and this is not a Cameroonian problem. That people are being tapped over the phone. Should we go to this extent? That handling a fellow human being one-on-one, we are talking one-on-one, eyeball to eyeballs. And we start thinking that it is because they are talking with A or B that is making them shifting their position. A lot have been shifting. Even with or without the Anglophone crisis, Cameroon has been witnessing. Today we are talking of the high cost of living. And we are thinking like the decision government made 5 years ago should be re-amended. People are already foreseeing that 2023 is going to be the worst year for Cameroon because oil prices risks going up. And if we have to have hikes in price of oil, it will mean that a common man might not still have a position to eat or feed the family. That is why we are saying that an institution that is made to handle state problem is not going to work with sentiment. You work for the interest of the state. Those solutions we provide to handle issues of the nation should be those solutions that will keep or take the nation to the next generation. I will always be thinking that those who wrote what we call the Bill of Rights in the United Kingdom, the United States, or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if you read those books, you will imagine that there is no aspect of bias because they apply to everybody. Such an instrument becomes the central point on the conduct of human beings, the way forward of the human race. And no matter where you are born, wheresoever you are living, they said human beings are one. Then now you find some regimes telling you that no, us in China, we have different rights as far as a human being is concerned. Us in Russia, we are like this. Us in the United States, yes, the right to hold a gun is a basic human right. And if that has to do with eliminating another person's life, then there is a need for us to look at that situation and continue moving forward. That is why we say laws are meant to be amended. Even the laws themselves, people will tell you that some laws are rigid, some are flexible. Yes, Cameroonians will tell you that the law on nationality passed on long, 1968, still remains a problem of sending Cameroonians, citizens of this nation, are unable to come back because they have taken a second nationality. In other nations, with what we call today the global village, is the world not moving towards being a common global family. So why do we still maintain such standard? Yes, Leonard, there is a need for the government to have an institution that really studies every problem and respond to it. It will be so biased to me, thinking that some people think that all the problems were exhausted. Some problems are coming within the problem. Should we say we have answered and we should not answer the other? If this is a worry for Cameroonians, there is a need for us to adapt to the circumstance that prevails or that which is before us. Cameroonians within today still feeling and they are thinking that if there is a need for us to solve and handle the Anglophone crisis once and for all, because attempts have been made. Remember, before the 1990 movement, before even the 1972 referendum, Anglophones Cameroonians have never been really quiet. And I will see some people don't know that a lot of those who supported the One Cameroon regime, I mean to people like Foncha, tendered their resignation that what they went into in 1961 is not what they had experienced in 1985. And that one is clear. If people who were actors within the time should be speaking the truth, who am I to deny? I was not there when these decisions were made. We simply work maybe to amend or to see how perfect Cameroon will be. There is a different, what we call amalgamation of institutions. And we have the Anglophone spirit and we have the English experience. What not? A lot of what is disturbing us, if we realize, just take in the domain of education, we have a lot of people in Yaoundé whom before the crisis, their children were schooling in Bamenda, in top high schools. And we still believe that a lot of our Bamileke brothers go to English schools and they said it is the best. What will become so downgrading or looking low for the national educational system policy to say the English system of education is the best, and we can apply that all over the national territory. Just imagine, those are concessions made, but you still find people thinking that the GC board should not exist, and that there should be no thing like the English and all exams should come from Yaoundé. Just imagine that coming tomorrow. Those are some of the things we are looking. Concessions being made. Look at the development pattern of Cameroon. We have over 5 or 6 electricity plants in Cameroon. How many are found in any of these other regions we are talking about? We are talking of what we call today the personnel. We're talking about the human resource. Somewhere, some people even said that if exams were organized normally in a now, Anglophones will never pass. And just imagine that, which means that there is a system in that school which does not fit the other system. And so our own children will never be capable of having access. We need to make Cameroon become reasonable for all. A lot of that has worked. We're talking of example of places like Canada. How do they succeed to maintain the different languages? And Canadians, yes, you might always have. We are told that even the Calabash, at times, they too grumble. People don't know what that means. Which means that no matter how perfect we try to do, every day, they will all be scrabbles. And the government active machinery should always try to adjust that we have the least of such squabbles.
Raymond will come in, and later Jarvis will also do. I want us to look at concessions. From the beginning of managing the crisis, we've seen government officials, the governors, the ministers, and other related officials from the state manning almost every effort seeking to end this crisis. And on the part of the separatists, we've seen the leaders, Ayabacho is always talking on what has to be done. Chris Ano is talking. We have Sako talking. And we have Marietta and a host of others. Can we now reflect that things are not moving as planned because maybe the wrong persons have been given charge to put an end to this, and that there is need to come up with a new breed of persons to seek a way out of the impasse?
Yeah, Mr. Liu, you rightly said, government will say, like in the past, we want to dialogue. We want to dialogue with who? Because within the framework of the separatists, you have different leaders who are not accountable to anybody or to each other. And because they're not accountable to each other, it makes it difficult for A to suspect B. If A wants to get into discussion with a government agent, say, no, you're already working with them, and so you will sell us out. There is a need for the separatists to come together and say, this is what we are all standing for us to negotiate. Now, at the level of the people that are standing there, the question is, like the government have asked, who gave you the mandate to talk for Southern Cameroonians? That's the question that's always been asked. As for government, okay, we have the mandate because we were voted into power. But truth be told, that at the level of those who are in government, as I said during my first intervention, the population does not believe in the elites that we currently have there. Because a cross-section of them cannot be able to convince the man on the street on what should be done. And this is simply because when they make promises, they go back to Yaoundé and need to give an account for a follow-up of those actions. So over the years, things have been promised that have not been executed. And it's simply because of the delay in government taking action of the things that have to be done. Now, at the level of the separatists, the All Anglophone Conference, which was supposed to produce the leaders who can be able to talk for Anglophones as according to the aspirations of the late Archbishop, where Cardinal Tumi, government did not allow it to hold. Which means that if government allowed that particular forum to hold, Southern Cameroonians or Anglophones of the English expression of Cameroon would have been able to say, okay, these are the people we are nominating nominating to represent us to talk with government so that our interests can be defended. You can agree with me, Mr. Leo, that those who are in the field or those who are separatists at different angles are carrying on their own agenda of what they want to do. And because they are carrying on their own agenda of what they want to do, we have dispersed ranks and energy is being wasted across the board. So there is a need for a rethink, as you're talking about concession, that the separatist movement sits as a block and say, what do we really want? And then likewise, at the level of government, there is a need for new faces to change. Mr. Leonard, if you look across the board in government, it's the same faces for the past 10, 20 years. And there is a need for a fresh breed in governance so that Cameroonians should say, okay, for at least we have a new breed of people that we can be able to trust, not those who have been telling us the same story over and over and over the years.
Okay. This is writing from Kumba says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. Mr. Liu, thank you for bringing my boss, Mr. Raymond Njumen, on board after a very long time. Mr. Raymond Njumen, you are welcome. Good evening to you. Okay, Elvis, writing from Shell New Bell. Good evening to you and to almost everybody watching us. To you, my brother Scott Melbourne, watching from the United States of America, I say good evening to you. This one says, so we know now from these books the authentic history of Southern Cameroons. Okay, I want you to, if you really think that you have a story to tell, come here and let us talk about the story. Don't insult anybody. I won't say anything that is insultive on any personality. Hello, Mr. Liu, the old guard has done their part and they are not capable of delivering anyone. Therefore, the concessions at this juncture should be stepping aside and giving the power to young, vibrant Cameroonians. We saw it yesterday in the House of Commons. Max Begini from Dusseldorf, writing from Germany. Now, he's talking about the need for rebranding those who have been heading efforts to end this crisis from the government bench, but also from the separatist bench. It is also the same persons. Instead of looking for the same persons from within the government bench, where are conflict resolution experts? We have so many of them in Cameroon, and then there are some of them out of the country. Can the separatists themselves not get the services of conflict experts? And then the government also makes use of the guys who are trained every day at Pan-African institutes. We have training institutes in Cameroon.
It's not like they cannot, and it's not like they are not willing to. For example, I'm sure there was a period where you had Professor Ngoye, where you asked the question, where are the historians? And Professor Ngoye actually raised an issue that never for once have all the members of the parliament requested the service of historians to come and tell them the history of the country so that they can effectively make an informed decision. And the same situation goes in here because it takes willingness of the government. Like Mr. Raymond said, the government has about 85% to pull the conflict to reduce the level of violence within this conflict. For example, if a military carries out an unauthorized act, that military can be held accountable by the government. But if a no-state armed group actor kills an innocent person, who hold him responsible? It's a question mark. Now, because of this, who is in a better place to engage peace and ensure that the human resource of the nation is not wasted? It is the government. And this actor of not calling negotiators or conflict resolutors to come into place to see how we can resolve this conflict is because both sides are fighting on a redefinition of human resource, and their redefinition of human resource are not the human beings that they ought to look at, but are the oil, the land, the waterfalls, the resources, the gold, the diamonds, our land that they are looking at. They are looking at the land. But if they realize that they were fighting the cause for a common man, they're fighting the cause to protect the human resource, who we are, the human resource, it will be easier for them to sort the services of negotiators. There's one thing we should also understand here is that we live in a system where all ministers, as like I said, have become conflict resolution experts. For example, when the conflict started, the government dispatched emissaries to go and first of all have an avant-garde of what the separatists wanted. Professors were sent out there, but I asked a question. Among all those who were sent, how many of them had a background on conflict resolution? We send CPD and militants. We send those who we are loyal to go and eat, and also those who are from the civil society who know that are not conflict resolution expert. Because if we are sent conflict resolution expert, they would have gone there, understood the story, and come and tell the government, see what, there is something. If we cannot meet physically, let's meet virtually. Let's have a hotline where we can say, okay, dear members of A, B, C, and Z, we are having a Skype in-camera discussion. Let us go there and argue. Let us have a discussion. Let me listen to you talk. Listen to the separatists talk to the end. The next day you come again and you listen to them talk again to the end. And the next day you will see that there is something maybe within you that you were not seeing, and you engage in them. So, Mr. Leo, to answer your question vividly, it is not that we don't have these persons, and it is not that these persons' services are not rightly needed. Professor Willibrod is there. Zingo is there. No, never for one has he been officially commissioned. There was a commission that was instead created, the commission to rewrite history. Rather, we need a commission for negotiation. We're instead having a commission to rewrite history. And you got what Professor Ngo said, that it is sad that nothing has been done, and he fears that nothing is going to be done in the nearest future. What does that tell you? It tells you that the willingness to stop the bloodshed is not there, but it is rather to prove a point that we must want this particular system. And I ask the question, if we have this particular system, who will it work for? For the human beings in the country, for Cameroonians. And if we want Cameroonians, why don't we have an open mind? Again, we, instead of a commission that we look at bringing conflict resolutors together, historians together, legal minds together to see how we can resolve this, we instead move for a motion of rewriting history, as though the history we read since who discovered River Niger, Mungo Park, as though the history we read since of Fon Achirimbi, as though the history we read since from the days of Augustine Gumjua was not valid. I ask a question, does it mean that all the O-level and A-level history we wrote between the period of 1960 right up to 2020 or 21 is null and void, since they are going to write the new history? No. What we need now is a commission that will look into peace and conflict. Mr. Leo, peace is a skill. It comes from the heart. Just as a tree needs good soil and water for it to grow, peace needs also willingness, patience, tolerance for it to nurture. And for this peace to nurture, peace is a killer of war, and peace is a killer of injustice. And for us to experience true peace, we must nurture it. What are we nurturing? The Northwest and Southwest, the armed group are nurturing hatred, bigotry, divide. The other side of the government, surrogates, self-acclaimed surrogates who claim they are fighting for national unity, are still using the same parameter of hatred, bigotry, divide, all to seek one goal. And I ask a question, who are we fighting for? If we are fighting for the man in Akwaya, if we are fighting for that mother in Agokunjaman who should not have a son killed, if we are fighting for that person in Menchum division, if we are fighting for that same person in Widikum, that those people should not die, we will have an open mind of peace. And that peace cannot come when we call Mr. A Ambazonian, Mr. B this, Mr. C this. When we call Mr. A, let us ask the question, why do you need this? And that question why is what we have never asked since this conflict started.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and all the vibrant panelists on board. The government has made some slight concessions, though not enough, and even the federalists who were initially just for the pre-1972 two-state federation now believe in a 10-state federation to avoid future problems. The only faction that hasn't made any concessions, and I don't think they will ever make any concessions because their leaders are in the diaspora, and to not feel a pinch of what the population on the ground is passing through, I do not have respect for anyone claiming to be a leader of a separatist movement that has never faced a single bullet because he lives miles away from the battlefield. Yes. Only the All-Anglophone Conference can democratically determine the position of Anglophones as of now. Special greetings to Comrade Tamai Travis. Raymond Chair is writing from Bamenda. Mr. Liu, good evening. Nice program to you guys out there. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Liu and everyone in the studio. Whenever I sit down to watch and listen to this beautiful and wonderful mind speak with hope, love, and peace for fatherland, I wish their voices could shake the pillars of that foundation that has been laid down for centuries. Sometimes one would just wish God to end human existence and see if those who think they are more superior than others will fix a new planet for themselves. Seriously, my heart bleeds for Cameroon, where wealth and power is more valued than human beings. Prince Bile is writing from Germany. Good evening to you, Prince, always watching. Let's be honest to ourselves. Do you believe this crisis can end when we have Anglophones in the government enriching themselves from it and telling lies every day and the situation is normalizing? I'm really taken aback when I hear someone with billions of francs CFA at his disposal for reconstruction say the work is going on well. Okay, Jacob is writing from Bomenda. Okay, good evening to you, Jacob. Greetings, Mr. Liu. Me, it's only for the citizens to face God, beg God to forgive us. It's through prayers that things can work. When we pray, God will make a way for us to come out of this problem. Emmanuel Boo is writing from Njumen. Njumen is in Limbe. Doc.Ako John Ako. Should positions stay the way they are? How do we solve the problem?
I believe it's very difficult. You can't really, we can't pray that everybody stays back in the position in which it is. That is not our wish. We are equally thinking that there's a need to move forward. One of the ways to move forward is, first of all, one of the things we have been crying here, that all those who are arrested linked to the crisis should be released without delay. They should be released without delay as the first step towards negotiation. And if at all, those who think, remember, one of the problems the Measure National Dialogue had was that the government was the sole organizer of such particular meeting. If the government can, for now, secede this particular part to another body, a body which equally can still be within Cameroon or out of Cameroon, we are saying that it is better to prevent life than to sacrifice human blood because we want to stay to power or maintain a particular position. No human being has fabricated or manufactured or created a life, but then people think it is a legitimate right for them to use the taxpayers' money, which we spend every day, that we pay every day, that should be wasted because the military, we are paying them, that the military were made to defend the nation. And I said it is total rubbish. Rubbish in the sense that the military of Cameroon are made to protect the frontiers, the boundary from external forces. It becomes wrong, and they are aware that when the military is used within an internal crisis, it is no longer governance. It is, therefore, calling order for us to prevent life. We cannot pray that everybody stay in the position, that the government holding strength.
What would you have wanted to be done in the case where people pick up arms in a nation? The military should sit and watch them.
No, we are not saying people pick up arms, Mr. Leo. If we need to move forward,
okay,
there is time for us to stop accusation of who did what and who started what.
Okay.
We are talking the atmosphere that we accept. The first aspect is that we had committed a lot of flaws and that the errors were committed by us. That may mean every Cameroonian, those who were or those who were not, because some people said, I'm not neither of the government nor on the other side. It becomes so funny that in the atmosphere of a crisis that is touching a nation, some people believe up to today that they are neutral. Whether they are killing the government or they are killing the military or killing whosoever, let them continue fighting. They should keep on fighting. How does that concern me? My brothers and sisters, the nation Cameroon will remain. But I'm telling you that the impact that we create will only be the history that others will read about us. What impact you created while you were in Cameroon matters. How many lives you protected. I still continue to think that the commissions that were created were all wrong and faulty. We never needed such thousands or hundreds of commissions. And imagine one was created to write history. We are rewriting history to solve a crisis that souls are being killed every day. Was this really what the crisis needed? We have created a commission which is meant for dialogue. Can it be permanent? Can we even have, in some countries, they will tell you that there's a minister in charge of dialogue and negotiation, which means that they have a problem solving which are recurrent And so when issues come up, table them there, and that particular ministry will take it over. We have commissions which existed and are existing. What of a commission for reconciliation, peace, and justice? Just imagine that, where Cameroonians would accept that if you are no longer and you think you have a worry, come to that commission. Let them hear you and handle your worry there and give you